The United States Navy launched the first Arleigh Burke class destroyer in 1989. The plan was to build a few dozen of them, then move on to a new generation of warship in the early 2000s. The Navy has now ordered more than 90 of them, and the production line is funded to keep building new ones into the 2030s. The current ships rolling out of the shipyards in 2026 are the same basic hull design that entered service nearly 4 decades ago. That is not how American naval procurement is supposed to work. Every other major Cold War-era warship class was retired and replaced on a generational schedule. The Arleigh Burke was never supposed to be the exception. It was supposed to be the bridge to something better. So, what happened to the replacement? The short answer involves a stealth destroyer that cost the Navy more than any surface ship class in its history, a cruiser program that was canceled outright, and a quiet decision in the Pentagon to keep building a 1980s design because nothing the Navy tried to put after it actually worked. The full story is stranger than the headline. To understand why the Arleigh Burke is still in production in 2026, you have to start with the war it was originally built to fight. The Arleigh Burke was conceived in the early 1980s, at the height of the Second Cold War, around a single overriding threat: Soviet anti-ship missiles. The Soviet Navy had spent the previous 2 decades building a fleet specifically designed to attack American carrier battle groups, and the centerpiece of that effort was the long-range cruise missile. Soviet bombers, submarines, and surface ships could all launch anti-ship missiles at standoff ranges, and a coordinated attack on a U.S. carrier group was the kind of scenario that kept American naval planners awake at night. The Navy's existing escort destroyers, the Spruance class and the older Charles F. Adams class, were not built to defeat that threat. They had limited radar coverage, limited missile capacity, and limited ability to coordinate fire against multiple incoming missiles simultaneously. What the Navy needed was a single ship that could detect, track, and shoot down a saturated missile attack on its own, while operating as part of a coordinated battlegroup network. The answer was the Aegis combat system, developed through the 1970s and matured by the early 1980s. The Arleigh Burke was designed from the keel up as a platform for Aegis, a destroyer built around the radar and combat system, rather than a combat system fitted into an existing destroyer. The first ship, USS Arleigh Burke, was commissioned in 1991, named for a World War II admiral known for aggressive surface combat tactics. The defining feature of the Arleigh Burke is the Spy-1 phased array radar, mounted in 4 fixed panels on the superstructure. Unlike a traditional rotating radar that scans the horizon once every few seconds, the SPY-1 can track hundreds of targets simultaneously and direct missile intercepts against multiple threats at once. Combined with the Aegis combat system's automated decision-making, the ship can engage a saturation attack, dozens of incoming missiles arriving within seconds of each other with a level of coordination no surface ship before it could match. The other defining feature is the vertical launch system. The Arleigh Burke carries between 90 and 96 VLS cells, each capable of holding a different type of missile: anti-air interceptors, land attack cruise missiles, anti-submarine rockets, and now ballistic missile interceptors as well. The ship can be configured for almost any surface combat mission by changing the missile loadout. That flexibility turned out to be one of the most important features of the design, though nobody fully appreciated it at the time. The hull itself is roughly 505 feet long, displaces about 9,500 tons at full load, and is powered by 4 LM2500 gas turbine engines, giving it a top speed above 30 knots. By the standards of major surface combatants, that is a fast and reasonably sized warship, bigger than the destroyers it replaced, smaller than the cruisers operating alongside it, and built specifically to operate at the center of a carrier strike group, rather than independently. The Arleigh Burke was supposed to be replaced by the Zumwalt class destroyer, a clean sheet design that began development in the 1990s. The Zumwalt was bigger, stealthier, and built around advanced gun systems that were supposed to provide unprecedented shore bombardment capability. The Navy originally planned to build 32 Zumwalts. By the time the program was restructured in the early 2010s, that number had dropped to 3. Cost overruns had pushed the per-ship price above $7 billion. The advanced gun ammunition turned out to be so expensive, approximately $800,000 per round, that the Navy eventually decided not to buy it at all, leaving the Zumwalts with guns that had no shells to fire. The cruiser replacement went worse. The CG-X program, intended to replace the aging Ticonderoga-class cruisers that operated alongside the Arleigh Burkes, was canceled outright in 2010 before any ships were built. The Navy concluded that the cost of developing a new cruiser hull was too high, and that an upgraded Arleigh Burke could fulfill the same role at significantly less expense. That decision turned the Arleigh Burke from a transitional design into a permanent one. The Flight III variant, currently in production, includes the new Spy-6 radar, significantly more capable than the original Spy-1, and a more powerful electrical generation system to support directed energy weapons in the future. The basic hull, however, is the same one designed in the 1980s. The Navy is building 2026 warships on a 1989 platform because every attempt to design something better produced either an unaffordable failure or no ship at all. Congressional shipbuilding politics, defense industrial base concerns, and the simple fact that the Bath Iron Works and Huntington Ingalls shipyards have spent decades optimizing for this specific hull all reinforce the same outcome. The Arleigh Burke has been the most heavily used surface combatant in the U.S. Navy for the past 3 decades. Burkes provided air defense for carrier strike groups in every operation from Desert Storm onward, launched Tomahawk cruise missiles in strikes from the Balkans to Syria, and increasingly served as the platform for ballistic missile defense, using upgraded SM-3 interceptors to track and destroy targets in space. In 2024, Burkes operating in the Red Sea engaged dozens of drones and anti-ship missiles launched by Houthi forces in Yemen, providing what the Navy described as the most sustained anti-air combat operations American warships had conducted since World War II. That combat record has changed how the Navy thinks about the class. The Burkes are no longer transitional ships waiting to be replaced. They are the backbone of American surface power, and the Navy is now planning to operate the latest Flight III hulls into the 2060s. The Next Generation Destroyer program, currently designated DDG-X, is moving forward, but slowly and with the lessons of the Zumwalt clearly in mind. Whether DDG-X actually enters service on schedule, or whether the Navy ends up building Flight IV Arleigh Burkes instead, is one of the most consequential open questions in American naval procurement. What the Arleigh Burke story really demonstrates is something the Navy has learned the hard way. A good enough design that can be upgraded indefinitely often outperforms an ambitious new design that cannot be built affordably. The same lesson the Air Force learned with the B-52, the Army learned with the Abrams, and the Navy is now learning with a destroyer that was never supposed to last this long. The lesson the Navy almost missed. Thanks for watching. The Arleigh Burke is one of those programs where the absence of a successor tells you more than the presence of the ship itself. If you found this useful, subscribe and stay with us. There is a much longer list of American warship programs that did not survive the journey from concept to service, and we will be getting to them. Next time, we are looking at a fighter jet that the Air Force ordered to be canceled, restarted, redesigned, and ultimately produced in numbers so small that its per-unit cost became one of the most cited examples of defense procurement gone wrong. See you then.